Hello and welcome back. So here is my show recipes test, okay? And here's my show recipe page. What I want to do is I want to get a button here that takes me to the edit recipe page. So let's set that expectation in my show test. Right here, I'm going to look for a link, okay? Assert, select, and if you remember, we've done this before. We look for a link this way, A, and within square brackets, we're going to say href equals question mark, okay? And we want this to match edit recipe path, and this should go to the edit recipe page, right? Edit recipe path for that recipe. And then we want the text to say, basically the button should have a text of edit this recipe. So what are we doing here? We're basically setting the expectation that the show recipes page is going to have a link to edit this recipe as well. And it's going to have text on the button or on the link that's going to say edit this recipe. So now if I run my test, you'll see I have one failure. It's saying expected at least one element matching this link, meaning recipes/id/edit, but didn't find it. All right, so let's go ahead and add this to my show recipes page. So under views, recipes, show HTML ERB, let's go ahead and add this at the bottom over here. After this second to last closing div, we're gonna add in this button. So I'm gonna give it a class, div class equals recipe-actions, okay? And I'm going to put the link here, embedded Ruby equals link to, and edit this recipe, okay? And I want this to go to the edit recipe path. It's gonna have at recipe instance variable, it's necessary, and then the class, I'm gonna give it button XS, and a button warning, so it's orange. Obviously, you can give this whatever you want, whatever styling you want. All right. Now, if I save this and I run my test, now it's passing because it found that link, okay? So if I reload this page, there you go, edit this recipe. And I'm gonna update this styling over here because I want this link to be white. Inside the text, I want it to be white. So let's go ahead and add that. I have recipe actions as the class. So let's pull up our custom CSS SCSS. Actually, I have it open right here. Okay, so dot recipe actions. And I'm gonna say padding dash top 5 pixel. Okay, let's try that out first. Okay, so it brings it down a little bit. Now let's add the text. Now this is where SCSS, okay, or remember what we had talked about earlier? This is where we can use SCSS. I'll show you regular CSS way of doing this, and then I'll show you where SCSS comes in handy. I can do dot recipe dash actions A for the link, okay, and I can say color pound FFF for white. There you go. Okay, looking better. But because I'm using SCSS, I can simply compress this and put the A over here. Okay. So within recipe actions, if it's a link, then I want the color to be pound FFF. Okay, semicolon, and I can just get rid of this whole thing. Delete, save that. If I reload this, there shouldn't be a change. There you go, no change. Perfect. All right, so this is working. Now the next thing I want is I also want the ability to delete this recipe. All right. How do I go about doing that? First, I want a button here that takes me to delete. And then I want the ability to actually destroy or delete this recipe. So let's go ahead and build that. So over here in my recipes test, where I had the show recipe, actually that's not it, that's the edit recipes. There you go. in my show recipes test right here, I'll have another expectation. So assert select, and I'll expect a delete link. ahref equals question mark. And this should go to the delete route, okay? And what is the delete route? If I type in Rails routes, okay, something seems to have happened. I don't know what's going on. Let's see. Maybe it's overusing my memory, but this can happen. Let me shut down my server real quick. Let's see if this helps. Okay. All right, there you go. It was using too much CPU power. So over here, okay, so there's my delete. It goes to /recipe/id. Okay, so it's going to be recipe path at recipe. Okay, and then I want the text to display delete this recipe. Okay, save that. If I run my test, Rails test, and then test integration recipes test.rb. All right, we have a failure, and it's saying that it's expecting this link. It couldn't find it. So let's go ahead and add this to our show page. Okay, right here where I have my edit this recipe link, right below it, I'm going to add the delete this recipe link. So link to delete this recipe, and this one will be sent to the recipe path at recipe. Okay, and remember, for delete you need to specify that method :space : delete, that this is a delete, comma, and then I'll move on to the next line and I'll say data : space. I want this JavaScript little pop-up to show up that says, are you sure you want to delete this recipe? So confirm : within quotes, are you sure you want to delete this recipe? Question mark, close quote, close curly brace, comma, and then I want this to have class of button, button access, and this one button dash danger. Okay, close embedded Ruby, save that. Now if I run my test, there you go. It ran, no errors. Okay, so at least it's finding the button. Now we need to implement the delete action. And for that, we're going to create an integration test for delete recipes. Again, we don't want to keep using the recipes test. We don't want to use the edit recipes test either. I want this to be in its own test. So Rails generate integration test recipes delete. Okay, so let's take a look at our test folder. There it is, test integration, and there is my recipes delete test. Okay, so the beginning of this is going to be similar to my edit recipes test. So right here, I'm going to copy the setup right here, Command C, right here, Command V. So setup, I have chef and recipe. So recipe is getting created. Then I want to test successfully delete a recipe. Okay, do end. All right, and within there, first I want to go to my show recipes page. So get recipe path at recipe, right, which is my show route. Then I want to assert template recipes show. Then I want to assert select a href, which is my delete link, equals question mark, close square bracket, close parentheses, and then recipe path at recipe, and then the text : delete this recipe. All right, I want to see this button in the show recipes page. And then how are we going to test for delete? Once I click on this button, what I'm expecting is the count in my database for recipes would decrease by 1, right? Because I'm deleting a recipe, and a successful delete means there's 1 less recipe. So similar to what we did when we were creating recipe, we're going to assert difference in recipe.count, okay? And instead of 1 or 0, this is going to be -1 since it's reducing, okay? Do, and then end over here, and within it I want to simply delete recipe path at recipe. So I want to basically submit to recipe path at recipe as a delete action, okay, as a delete. Now once that's done, I want to definitely redirect, assert redirected to, and I want to make sure that it goes to the recipes path, okay, which is the recipes listing. And I also want a flash message, right? So assert not flash.empty. Okay, so there's my integration test for successfully deleting a recipe. So let's try it out. Rails test. All right, so what is it saying? The action destroy could not be found for recipes controller. All right, now if you first want to test out that this is actually showing up, if I restart my server, all right, if I reload the page, there is delete this recipe. So the link is showing up, great. Now over here, I'm gonna go back and I'm going to implement the destroy action in my recipes controller. So let's look for, there you go. There's my recipes controller, edit, update after that. And above private, make sure this is not below private, above private, I'm gonna say define, destroy. And here, I'm simply going to find the recipe based on this params ID and simply destroy it, okay? So recipe.find within parentheses, params within square brackets, :ID. Okay, so this finds the recipe based on the ID from the params hash, and then dot destroy, which simply deletes it. All right, then I have expectations, so flash success, and I want it to say recipe deleted successfully, and then I want to redirect to recipes path. All right, so let's see if this works now. Rails test. Perfect, so this should be working. So over here, I'm gonna reload this page. All right, let's try deleting this. Testing flash edited, delete this recipe. I'm gonna click on it. There is the JavaScript pop-up. Are you sure you want to delete this recipe? Okay. All right, recipe deleted successfully. Perfect, so there's my delete feature working. All right, now we have successfully completed all of our CRUD actions for recipes. We know how to create recipes from the browser, edit recipes, view recipes, and also delete recipes. All right, so let's go ahead and make a commit. I'm going to shut down my server first, and let's make a commit. So git add -a, git commit -m, implement, edit, and delete. Okay, git push to push our code to our GitHub repository. And at this time, let's also push to Heroku. All right, we haven't pushed to production in a while. And since I have this working functionality of creating recipes and the like, I want to be able to do this from production. So let's go ahead and deploy this. One thing you have to keep in mind, remember, we need to create a user in the production database, and production database is different from test or development database. So we're going to have to create a user in production once we deploy. So let's do that. I'm going to say simply git push Heroku master. All right, so it's deployed. So step one after deploying, okay? The last deploy we didn't have a database. So we're gonna have to run any pending migrations in Heroku. And the way to do that, issue this command, Heroku run Rails db:migrate. This will basically create your database if it's not created there already. And if it's already created, it will simply run all of your migrations that haven't been run in production. It's going to run all my pending migrations in production. All right, so everything should be set. So let's go to my application, okay? Let's go to masroor.myrecipes.heroku app. There we go. Let's go to our new recipes link, /recipes/new. All right, now I won't be able to create the recipe because my user ID is not present, okay? So if you see this, blah, 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 create recipe, it's gonna say chef must exist, chef can be blank, okay? So my user is missing. So let's go ahead and remedy this situation. Over here, I'm going to run Heroku's Rails console, okay? Heroku run Rails console. This will run Rails console in production. All right, so here I'm going to go with chef equals chef.create, and then I'm gonna give it a chef name of Masroor and email of masroor.hussain@gmail.com. I'm only using this because I have a Gravatar associated with it. All right, so let's create that chef. So now my chef.first, which is the code in my create action right here, chef.first, is loaded in production. Because if I type in chef.first, there you go. So I have a chef. Now I'm going to exit out of my Heroku Rails console. All right, so let's try it out now. Whoops, wrong one. This is my local. So over here, let's try. This is my first recipe. Description of my first recipe. New recipe, new app, learning Rails. Life is great. Okay, let's try it. Create recipe. Recipe was created successfully. Perfect. This is my first recipe. My image is showing up. Great. So there you go. So now I can edit this recipe. I can delete this recipe. I can go to my recipes listing. Perfect. If I click on it, it takes me over here. Great. At this point, I'd encourage you to play around with this. We've successfully implemented CRUD. We've deployed our application to Heroku. You can take this link. First thing, I would recommend that if you have a blog, post it to your blog, share with your friends that, hey, check it out, I'm learning Rails, and share this link. Encourage them to go and create recipes. I would also encourage you to have one of these actions in your dropdown take you to the new recipes page, okay? Also, after that, post the Heroku app link to the Q&A for this lecture, because other students and myself would love to go check out your app as you're building it, okay? So I would like to see the color scheme that you've chosen, any other updates that you've made in the dropdown, any other links you've added, okay? And also the last part is make sure that you share your GitHub repo link in the Q&A post. That way, if anyone needs help, they can simply look at your GitHub repo and see what they're missing, all right? And that's all I want to cover in this video. I'll see you in the next one where we're going to work with partials and refactoring. See you there.